Hi, my name is Cindy Rang with the Fabric Patch in Ephrata, Washington. You can find our website at fabricpatch.net. And today we are going to do the finishing for our Westport block of the month. Okay, here's the quilt behind us. If you've been following along the whole time, we've done 12 different blocks. We did 10 of the little blocks, and then we did 2 different sort of setting blocks, or setting blocks, I guess is what you would call it. And the twin size looks sort of like this. So all along, we sometimes had to make 2 blocks of something or whatever those setting were to create that secondary effect in the inside. Or this one is our king size. And this pattern is still available on our website or perhaps in your local quilt shop. We no longer have any kits left of the fabric, but it's easy enough to use your own stash or find the fabrics again with us or in your local quilt shop. So what we're doing today is we want to show you 2 things. We want to show you how to square up those blocks that you've been making all along, and we also want to show you this really cool setting technique, which is what she's doing for her outside border. We'll let you zoom in on that. Of course, I have the quilt behind me, but it's a pretty awesome trick and crazy simple. So we're going to show you what to do, and then at the very, very end, after you're all set on what to do, we're going to show you an optional trick. Because what's happened with these is with this particular block, we've pieced all of these blocks, and she's had us put this little block sashing on for each of the blocks. And what that does is when you have a block sashing, it creates this floating effect with the blocks. And if you look up close, you can see there's a little seam right here, and there's a seam here. And it's a little bit different because oftentimes what we'll do is we have our blocks and then we have a sashing strip here, sashing strips here. We oftentimes will add a cornerstone block here, which is what helps to keep everything nice and straight. And it's a lot of added pieces. So a block sashing is actually a really clever idea and a way to get that same floating effect with a little bit less work. Our suggestion from the very beginning was not to cut this the way that she said, but to give us just a tiny bit of extra fabric, because sometimes when you're piecing your block, even if you cut accurately and you have that 1/4 inch seam allowance, I don't know why, but things don't always end up exactly the way that they're supposed to. So we call it insurance, so that after we're done piecing, pressing, everything is ready to go, we have just that tiny little bit that we can shave off so that every single block is the exact size. So for this particular quilt, we are trimming our blocks to 11.5 inches. And that's why at the very end, we're going to show you a little different technique, because we think this border is such a cool border. We want you to see how to make it if you have a whole bunch of random 12.5 inch blocks, because the measurements would be a little bit different and you would have to use a different ruler, but stay to the end for that. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our block first. I have all of my blocks need to be trimmed, and if you recall, as we were piecing these, we used a lot of mixed backgrounds, which is kind of fun. And since we knew that we were adding a little bit extra, what was kind of fun is as we were getting going along, if we didn't quite have enough when we were using our little bits, it was okay because we knew we were going to trim things up. So it does give you a little extra opportunity there, but we're going to trim this one. So you can see that this block at the moment measures approximately 12 inches roughly, maybe a little bit more. And we're going to trim it down to 11.5 inches. So the one thing that we use is we use this wet erase marker. If you've done any videos with us before, you've seen this. This is just a regular Expo marker. We have it on our website. You can find it at an office supply store. And what it is it's just a way to keep you grounded with your ruler. So I know that I am going down to 11.5. I'm going to come over here. This is where 11.5 is, and up here, this is where 11.5 is. And the reason that I need that is that sometimes when I'm trimming, I might cut multiple things only to find out, oh my gosh, I trimmed that one 11 inches or 11.25 or, you know, whatever, or oh shoot, that funny little 1/2 inch on one side is now on the wrong side. So for me, it just kind of keeps it where it's supposed to keep it, and it keeps my eyes looking at the right line. And the other reason that we use the wet erase marker is because then if I flip the ruler over or if I do something else, it's not going to rub off. It's not going to rub off on my finger. It's not going to rub off on the fabric. So when it's time for me to take it off, I can just either wet my finger or wet a little piece of tissue paper, and I can make my line disappear so that I can use my ruler the next time. So now that I have my marks and I see right where my 11.5 is, it's easy for me to square up my ruler and square up my block. And what I do is 1/2 of 11.5 is where my center should be. And 1/2 of 11.5 is 5 3/4. So 5 3/4 is going to be right there, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 3/4. Let me just make a dot so you can see it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 3/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 3/4. So that's our center. So it's nice to know where the center is of our block. So then we know exactly how much we're taking off all the way around. So you can see up here is just a tiny little bit. Over here, a smidge. Here, a little bigger than a smidge. A little bigger than a smidge. So it's kind of nice just to see exactly where my center is. I can also kind of spin it a little if I need to, just to make sure that these lines all line up. There's other little reference lines as you're going, just to see where those seams are, to make sure that everything is nice and square. Let me get my... All right, and once we feel like we're good, I've looked at that a couple times, I feel like I'm good. Last little check. And then I'm just going to cut this side and cut this side, and then I can go ahead and just turn my block. I don't have to turn my ruler if I don't want to, or I could. But I'm just going to go ahead and line that up, and right away I don't have to do any math or anything. I can see here's my green line, here's my green line, everything's lining up, and look at that, it's still right in the center. Everything is good, everything is still lined up. Just double check all of my reference points are right where they need to be. Cut the top. And now that I've done with squaring up my block, I'm going to go ahead and do all of my other blocks, and then when I'm done, I can easily just remove that mark. Okay, all of my blocks are trimmed up. All of them ended up being a perfect 11.5 inches, which is always a good thing. Now it's time to put everything together. So you have a couple of pages in the back of your pattern, and depending upon whether or not you're using the twin size or the king size, they give you the layout. Now, of course, this is just the layout according to her. If you want to move those blocks around a little bit because you have different colors that you want to do something different with, absolutely nobody cares. Do anything you would like to do. Overthink it several days if that's kind of what you're into. I totally understand that. But what's going to happen is all of those little setting blocks, the ones that create that secondary pattern, those really do need to go right where she's put them. But again, what's really nice about this is you don't have to worry about all of those sashing and all of those cornerstone blocks, because we have that block sashing on there, which makes it really, really nice. So we're going to lay all of those out, and then the last step is this really cool border. So let's look at this up close just for a second. What it is here's all of our blocks, right? And then here's those fun setting blocks that create that secondary pattern in here, and you'll see all of that. That is kind of cool. So what we're going to look at is this. So what she has you do is she has you cut a 5.5 inch strip of whatever that outside color is for you, and a 3.5 inch strip of your background right here. And then I'm going to show you how we're going to cut that. And so you can see that when we sew this together, and she gives you all of the directions really easy, exactly how to layer that, because what happens whenever you're doing a diagonal setting is that when it comes time to sew this together, you're going to sew this row. So you sew this seam here to this seam to this seam, and you work your way down, and then you do your next one, this seam to this seam to here to here, and you work your way down, and you sew your rows diagonal, and then you sew those on. She talks about that in the pattern, gives you all very good directions. Most of you probably have done that technique before. If you have not done that before, we have a video, maybe it'll play either right after, or maybe we'll link it for you below, but it's called My Second Quilt, and it's a quilt that I did with my granddaughter Eliza, and it's just simple 5-inch squares, but she did it on point. And so we talk about the math if you want to do this sort of a diagonal setting and a side setting block, and how you would do that and how you would piece that together. So if you need some assistance with that, that's a pretty good video, and Eliza is adorable and fun to watch, so there is that. But so let's look up at this for a second, because the other thing that I want to mention is that these blocks are 11.5 inches, and you're going to like this setting so much that you're going to think, well, gosh, I have all of these weird 12.5 inch blocks and I'd like to do that. So that's the part that at the end we're going to give you the measurement and show you how to do this with a different ruler to be able to have this effect. But the reason that it's important and that math is important is because for this 11.5 inch block, you can see that that measurement has to be the size of the block plus enough to be able to create this. And if we zoom into this, what you will see is the same thing when we're doing this row and we attach this to this row. What happens is that. And we need that because then when we sew on our final border, or if you're going to quilt it and that's where your binding is going to be, you need that little bit there so that we don't blunt those points. If it comes out exactly the same size, then what will happen when this is quilted is you'll have a weird, you know, the end of your block will look like that. You'll have all of those nice points except for that. So that's why we need that, and that's why that math becomes somewhat critical. So let's go ahead and look at the way she puts this together. Okay, this ruler is fairly important. We have been, if you've been following along, we've been using this ruler the entire time for multiple parts of the block. This is the Creative Grid ruler, and it's the 90 degree quarter square triangle ruler. You can find it on our website or the link below. What's also nice about Creative Grid rulers in particular is two things. One is that they come with all of these fun little grippy bits that don't come off, and the other thing is they end up with a QR code. So if you just take your phone in photo mode and hover it right over that QR code, it will take you immediately to a video that Creative Grids has put together on exactly what to do with this ruler. So it makes it kind of nice. You don't have to keep all of those paper directions anymore. You have a little video that goes with your ruler. And that's true of all Creative Grid rulers. They do that for everything. All right, so there's two different cuts. This one is your background piece that's 3.5 inches. And what you're going to do, and I'm just going to do this kind of upside down so that you can see it. And what you're going to do is you're going to line this up just like that. You can see that I'm right on that 3.5 degree mark. And I'm going to cut. And the reason I'm over just a little bit, I don't know if you can see in the video or not, but this is my salvage edge, and I kind of don't really want that to be a part of what I'm doing. So this part is waist. Oh, oops, I shouldn't have moved that yet. Strange place. My assistant, Brianna, my lovely assistant. There you go. Thank you. So this is our first one. And then now what's going to happen is I'm going to turn that ruler around. And then we do the same thing. I'm just going to line that up. It still is going to line up. This edge is already cut. This is on the 3.5. And again, my lovely assistant. I guess I'm totally on the wrong side now. And then I'm just going to keep doing that for however many I need. And what happens is you have no waste other than that tiny little bit at the beginning, and there's going to be a tiny little bit at the end. We're going to talk about this waist again in just a second. So these are my small triangle pieces, and then I'm going to do almost the same thing with this 5.5 inch piece. What's different is I'm going to line it up on the bottom instead of on the top. which means that it ends up on that 3" up on the top, which you probably don't necessarily need to know that, but that's just a nice little marker of where you're at. In this particular one, I already cut the selvage off, so this is my only waist. I might be able to cut that. So here's my piece, and then I'm just going to keep doing that. Flip that around. So that that is on the bottom there. I'm on that 3 right here. And, oh yeah, Brianna, you're going to have to... There we go. And then we'll just keep doing that. And some of you are going to say, well, gosh, I've done something similar to this before, and what we did was we sewed our strips together and then we just cut our strips. If you do that, you're only, because this is a different size from that, you will end up with massive amounts of waste. So this is the economical and correct way to do it, not to do it in strips, but to do it in 2 different pieces. And it's okay, because then all you're going to do, it's super simple. All you're going to do is take this piece, sew that on, press that open. It looks just like this, and that's it. That is your side setting piece. So you'll see, and again, for me, we have mixed backgrounds, but this is where it's going to line up. So as soon as I sew that on there, you can see I have my tiny little bit left over here. It's going to be the same amount over there. After my seam allowance, I'll have my full 1/2 inch up at the top. So that's it. These are the little pieces that you're going to make. All right, so your pattern will tell you how many trapezoids and how many triangles you need to cut based on whether you're making the twin size or the king size. So again, super fantastic way to do this. And so this is how you have to do it for this particular pattern. And again, you already have that ruler. We've been using that ruler all the way along. But I just want to show you a fun little trick, because you're going to like this border so much that you're going to want to use it for all of those 12.5 inch blocks that we've made for other quilts. So I want to just show you something. 2 things are going to happen. One is that your strip size needs to be a little different. And the other thing is you won't be able to use this particular ruler. The reason you won't, and I think it's the reason that she used 11.5 inch blocks, you could do 11.5 inch as a maximum size, or you can do smaller, but you can't do bigger with this particular ruler. We needed to come down about another inch. Maybe it was a 1/2 inch. So you have to use a really large ruler, or you can just use your regular little 6x24. We still did our little triangles exactly the same way. This is a 3.5 inch, and again, for limited waist, we still used this ruler, and we cut all of our little triangles out so that we had however many we needed of these. And then for this, it has to be 6.5 inches. Now at 6.5 inches, let's go ahead and look close up here for a second. I just want to show you, maybe I'll flip it around so you can see it, why we can't use this ruler when we're at 6.5. It's because if we're to cut this as big as we can, it's not the right size. We were able to get the right length, but not the right width. So because this square is just a little bit too short. So we did use this for these pieces up here, but for the bottom piece, we're just going to do it the old-fashioned way. We have to cut a 45-degree angle. And don't be confused, this is the 90-degree quarter square triangle, but again, a 45 and a 45 is what gives you your 90. So what you're gonna do is on your ruler, oh, maybe I'm gonna do it this way so that you can see it. If you look at your ruler, let me flip it this way. Is that okay? Yep. You have 60, 45, and 30. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay this out so that your 45-degree angle is right there on your top edge. And I'm going to cut that off. This is my only waist. I can use that for something else. And then I'm going to, this still has to be a trapezoid. I'm going to measure over 6.5 inches, and you can do this a couple of ways. Probably the easiest way, really, you can line it up on your mat if you'd like to, or you can just go ahead and with your ruler go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5. Make a little mark. I like to use my friction marker because that'll come off with my iron, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut my next 45-degree angle. So I'm going to line that up right there, find the 45 right there. So do you see that? It says 45. That's my line. I'm right on the edge where I've marked that mark. I'm going to cut this. And here is my trapezoid that goes with my triangle, and this is the size that will work for my 12.5 inch block. And then I'll just keep going. I'm just going to do the same thing. Come down, measure over 6.5. You can't really pre-measure. You have to do it as you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5. Do my little mark. Line up my, find my 45 on my ruler, which is right. It says 45 right there. There's my line. And if you can see my little mark. There is my trapezoid. And then I'll just keep going. And you'll see that my only waist will be, oh, I might have some waist there. Let's see if I can get 3. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5. Nope, I'm not going to get 3. So here is my mark. Here's my line with my 45, and you can see that I'm short. Probably about 3 inches. You absolutely, depending upon where you're at with your strips, you absolutely could add a seam there. And I think sometimes people get a little bit concerned about seams where they think they're not supposed to be. But, you know, if you think about what your quilt is, it's nothing but seams anyway. And on your border, it's not uncommon for you to have a seam on your border. So I would think nothing of seaming my strip together there to add that. And again, as you're looking in your quilt, that's all your quilt is anyway, is massive seam after seam after seam. It all is going to get quilted down, and no one's going to think anything of, oh my gosh, why is there a seam there? Well, it's there because it needs to be. Same thing with this. I wouldn't waste this size of a piece of fabric. I would put a little seam there. Okay, that was all my best tips. So we always really enjoy having a Block of the Month series with you guys. I hope that you've enjoyed this one. We have quite a few others on our channel. We're getting ready to start 2 more. If there's anything that you have any questions about, you can certainly contact us at info@fabricpatch.net. This whole series was called Westport. And again, I just want to reiterate one last time that that very last little technique is not for this quilt. It's for 12.5 inch blocks, not your 11.5. It was just a fun little bonus because I'm pretty sure you wanted to know that. So anyway, thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for watching our video. We invite you to leave a comment, hit the like button, or better yet, subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. You can also visit our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Pinterest pages, or find all of those things and our online store at fabricpatch.net.